Just real quick, in an attempt yesterday, a failed attempt to try to keep the focus on Maryland, I got asked a question yesterday about another school and tried to keep the focus on Maryland like I always do in the next opponent, and that didn't go over very well. So I didn't feel like it was appropriate to talk about another school or another person's job status. So that's why I addressed it the way I did. But obviously have all the plans in the world to be here and be here for a long time. So I just wanted to address that because it became something that I did not want it to be or intend to be. So I wanted to put that statement out there, and then obviously would love to talk about Maryland on our practice day.
Could I ask you, James, about from a recruiting standpoint, is it important that, or I guess how frustrating is that you have to deal with it? Because I'm sure you were getting questions from recruits about that.
Yeah,
more so than us.
But again, I've said what I want to say. I really want to talk about Maryland and the upcoming opponent. That's what I wanted to talk about all along. So look forward to answering those questions.
On a senior day, do you find that you have to kind of harness or channel the emotions of your seniors, especially early in games?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I don't think there's any doubt about it, but I think there's a fine line because I do think you also have to address the importance for the rest of the team and what this game means to those guys. They remember what their last game in high school was like. I think you have to address it and you have to talk about it and the significance of it. Last game in Beaver Stadium. But then we try to move on from there and try to keep things as normal as possible. And then I think the other thing is obviously we have another game too, so I think that helps.
James, today Trace and Amani were accepted Senior Bowl invites. A lot of people wonder how Trace's game might project to that next level. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you think he would do at that next level?
I think he's going to have to overcome some things early on, but I think as people get a chance to spend some time with him and around him and watch him work out, I think he's just going to continue to do what he's always done. There was doubts in high school, there was doubts in college, there will be doubts in the NFL. And it's just going to continue. I just think he's going to be one of those guys that constantly overcomes some of the false narrative that's out there. So I think it's a lot better now than it was 10 years ago. But I think it's gonna translate really well. I've spent time in that league. I've watched guys in that league. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that he can play at that level and play well.
How have you digested the criticism in light of the fact that you guys are reasonably close to having 10 wins again, but at the same time you would talk to some people and there would be this impression that the sky is falling and that you're not a good football team? How do you handle that as someone who cares about what people think? Yeah,
I think it's challenging because I think about our players, I think about our kids, our children. It's pretty fascinating, I get it. There's high expectations and standards here, and there's nobody that has higher expectations and standards than we do. But to think that this may be one of the best 3-year runs in Penn State's history in the Big Ten era, and kind of where we're standing in terms of nationally and in our conference and things like that, I'm proud. Is there some things that we would have liked to do better, or some games we'd like to have back, some plays we'd like to have back? No doubt. But you look around the country, that's a similar tune all over the country. It's similar in NFL. One of the things that probably made me feel a little bit better is I think the first game of the year, the Eagles got booed at halftime. After being Super Bowl champs. So I think that kind of illustrates the climate a little bit. But
I was booing at my TV.
So. Were you? Yeah. No, they won a Super Bowl. Give them a half. Jeez. But I get that. But I also try to look at the big picture. I look at how our guys conduct themselves off the field in the community. They've been fantastic. I think about our guys, what they've done in the classroom. They've been fantastic. And then you look again what we've been able to do on the field over the last 3 years, specifically this senior class. There hasn't been too many times, especially when you talk about the Big Ten era since we've joined the Big Ten. So, you try to keep it all in perspective, I also would say, obviously those things are fine, but most importantly, we got to be ready to play well this week against Maryland, who's obviously played well the last couple weeks and have run the ball really well. But I do. You start to get to this point of the season, you start to say, I'd like to look back at some point at the end of the season and be able to kind of look at what we've been able to do this year, and then what we've really been able to do over the last 5 years. I've heard people say this before. I think if someone would have told you 7 years ago that over these 5 years we would have done this, and this, I think most people would have thought you were crazy.
Well, James, you mentioned before Jahan Dotson is a guy that you knew was special but didn't quite know how special until a few games in. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. I'm just curious, is there a general rule of thumb, like, how long does it take for you to kind of know, what you have, when you have?
Well, I think in the recruiting process it's always hard, but then once they show up, they either typically, very few of them kind of are what you thought. They're either better than what you thought, or they're a year away, or something like that. Jahan's one of those guys. He just never seems like he's running, but he runs by people. He's one of these guys. We're in a generation now where you see guys try to make catches look sexier now than they are. They one-hand balls that they really should catch with two, because they see that on highlights, or they see that in pregame warm-ups and things like that. The great ones, Jerry Rice, they make the tough catches look easy. And that's what Jahan does. I mean, literally, there never seems like there's a ball outside of his reach, and he just extends and catches the ball on his fingertips consistently. So he's just one of those guys. Even blocking, he's not the biggest guy in the world. You didn't know how he'd be that. He fights. Him and KJ, they fight like crazy, in the blocking stuff. Reading defenses, learning the playbook. Usually there's something that holds these guys up, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether it's emotionally, from a maturity standpoint, whether it's the focus, whether it's the physicality, there's something. And for him, it all seems to come pretty natural to him. I think obviously the exciting thing is what's it going to be like when he gets stronger and more explosive and puts a little bit more size on. But it's just come very easy to him.
James, you brought up wanting to be a little bit better in the fringe red zone a few times through the course of the season. Are there commonalities that have tripped you guys up there, and what might they be?
I think it's been our throwing game really kind of for the year. Whether it's drop balls, whether it's pressure on the quarterback, whether it's sacks, or whether it's being a little bit off, missing some throws that we should make. We've just been a little bit off, and it hasn't been the same tune each week. It's been something a little bit different. And for you to really sustain drives with our style of offense and what we need to do, we got to be able to stretch the field, and we haven't consistently done it. We've run the ball better, but I'd make the argument, even if we were able to stretch the field a little bit more in our passing game and just be a little bit more consistent in our passing game, it would actually open up even more opportunities in our running game for us. So I think that showed up in the fringe for us a little bit. But I actually think we've been better in the pure red zone because we're running the ball better.
Ohio State pretty well tenderizes whoever they played, whether they win or lose. Does your opponent's week before play into all how you game plan in terms of just the kind of game it was, or do you just go into it thinking that everyone's 100%?
Yeah, we go into it. You always have to prepare if everybody's going to be 100%. I think obviously they're playing for bowl eligibility. Obviously they're playing for their teammate. There's a lot of different things going on there. They've been a very resilient bunch, and they're talented. And they're talented. I think they're probably I think they probably don't get enough credit for how talented their roster is. I think obviously what they did against Ohio State, you could make arguments both ways, but they went down to the wire with one of the better programs in the country, and could make the argument should have and could have won the game.
How many kids will you have at your house tomorrow, and how do you pull that off logistically? Are you cooking the turkeys?
No. So we have a friend, Laura, who does a great job here in the community. So she will make the most of it, and then my wife will make kind of what she makes that kind of accents. My wife usually makes a big prime rib and mashed potatoes and other things. So we'll have all of that. But yeah, it's too much to. I want the holidays to be relaxing and fun for the family, and it's stressful enough just cooking for your family. But then you have another, 15 or 20 players and staff. Chris is coming. It's become a tradition where she comes to the house and we kind of all just sit around. But it's relaxed. I think sometimes you think you're coming to the head coach's house and it's going to be something formal. It is not. It is sweats. It's sit on the couch. It's eat. It's fall asleep and slobber on yourself a little bit. It's wake up, eat some more, watch games. And it's been great. So yeah, what I really enjoyed here is not only the kids coming to my house, but then also some of their families. I think that's been really cool to break bread with not only the players but their parents that are in town. So it's something that's been really good.